Welcome back to the Reboot Era, the podcast for anyone navigating layoffs, career pivots, or personal reinvention. This episode's theme is how to keep going when you've done everything right, and it's still not enough. Today, I'm joined by Ashley Martin, a seasoned content marketing and strategy leader who was laid off in October 2024, marking her fourth layoff. She has been navigating a 9-month job search ever since. Ashley opens up about the shock of losing a role she loved, the harsh reality of severance that didn't reflect her impact, and the emotional and financial weight of prolonged unemployment. We talk about the invisible tax of being trans in today's job market, what it's like to use SNAP and food banks while still showing up to interviews, and how she's found a way to stay grounded, gracious, and real, even on the hardest days. If you're feeling stuck, underwater, or unseen, this episode offers validation, community, and the kind of honesty most people won't say out loud. Here's our conversation.
My name is Ashley Martin. Pronouns are she, her. I am a transgender woman. I am a content marketing and content strategy professional. I'm very passionate about content. I know it sounds potentially a little bit over the top, but I genuinely believe that content can change the world, even marketing content. So, I don't just take my job seriously because it's my job or because I take food and shelter seriously. I also take my job seriously because I believe it's meaningful.
Nice. I like that. So you reached out. Some people ask how I know people, how I find people to join the podcast. And I've been posting a lot on LinkedIn about me getting laid off and just being, I wouldn't say angry, just kind of loud about the situation and this market that we're going through. Maybe you could talk about, did you see one of my posts? Did I reach out to you? What do we talk about?
I saw one of your posts. I would have to go back and dig through LinkedIn to find it from my memory. I think it was just a post that basically shared if you'd been laid off and you're interested in being a part of this podcast project that you're working on. And I thought, sure, I've got things that I could share about that. I certainly, this is the fourth time in my life I've been laid off, but this one's been the hardest.
Yeah. And I didn't expect the exact post, but it's that easy, just talking to people, posting online, asking people for a favor or to tell their story is really that straightforward. So let's hop into your story. What was sent in is that you were laid off back in October of 2024. So it's been, 9 months now, and you're still laid off, ? Okay, I'm sorry. I can imagine the stress that goes through, but I'll turn it to you. Do you want to kind of share what happened and, what have you been doing since?
As far as what happened, and probably any listener you have who works in marketing will smile and nod when I say what I'm about to say. But when there are layoffs, when a company needs to start scaling back, the marketing department is very frequently one of the first departments to take hits. We are future revenue generating, not necessarily current revenue generating. And so we are, as marketers, it makes sense to me that we would be among some of the first folks to get laid off. And I think that's what happened with my former employer, but I don't know exactly. I wasn't provided a lot of detail about why layoffs were occurring. I know that there was at least one significant round of layoffs before I was laid off, about 11 months before I was laid off. I know there have subsequently been other rounds of layoffs because I've heard from friends and former coworkers who either still are at that company or were at that company. I didn't see it coming. I felt really secure in my position. I had accomplished a lot at that company, led some pretty big projects that a lot rested on, and felt really secure in my role. So when I hopped on a call with the person I expected to be my new manager, because the senior vice president I had been reporting to was leaving the company, and an HR rep was also on the call, there was that moment of, oh shit, because I knew what it meant. I knew as soon as I got on the call and I saw the additional person, I was like, this isn't the call I expected this morning. And here we are.
So did they tell you why? Or I guess what was the reason they gave?
That very general, just making some changes, reorganizing what the marketing department looks like. To my memory, and I think it would be obvious to most folks, that was a stressful conversation. So I am certain. There are details I don't remember at all. There may even be details that I imagine happened that didn't, but my memory of it is that they didn't really say anything specific as to why. It was just general information. They moved pretty quickly to here's what's going to happen next, how we get the laptop you have in your possession back from you. Here's what your severance package looks like. And I think we spent, I don't know, maybe at least a third of the conversation with me as firmly as I was comfortable pushing back on the severance package, because it struck me as much smaller than made sense for the level of contribution I'd made to that company and the time I'd spent there. And then it was clear that the conversation was done. We were off that call in 10 to 15 minutes. It was not long.
Yeah, it never is. When they're letting you go, they let you go.
And I've let folks go. I've laid people off or been the person delivering the news rather that somebody was being laid off. And I've fired people. And I know when I'm on the other side of that conversation, the most effective tactic is to be firm and direct and pretty definitive in what you communicate. That while there's a temptation to try and soften the blow and say something that makes it feel less final, that really all that does is prompt the other person to try to push back. And so I, immediately I was like, well, I know. There's no debate to be had here. The decision is made. Best case scenario for me right now is to at most say, I feel like my severance package should be adjusted, and then say, okay, thanks. And that was that.
Got it. So did you end up getting a little bit more than what they originally presented you with?
Oh, no.
Unfortunately
No,
not.
no,
Okay.
they said in the call, that they would look into it, which
Yeah. They're not looking into anything.
and maybe they did. I don't know. I don't know what happened beyond that call. Maybe looking into it was as simple as the two folks who were on that call saying, we're not going to do that, right? Right. I mean, and that would technically, be looking into it, but I don't know. I just know they did eventually get back to me and say, no, the severance offer is what it is, and that's that.
Yeah. And before we hop into more of like lessons learned and what you've been doing, one other question that I think comes up for people who get laid off is the instant, what did I do wrong? Or like, why are you attacking me? Did you ever feel throughout the last 8 or 9 months of being laid off, even during the layoff itself, did you ever feel like you were being personally targeted?
That's a really good question. Personally targeted? No. At least at that time, I was the only person on my team who was laid off. I was also the leader of my team. And because I was the leader of my team, I know that I was the person on the team who made the most money. And I know by what margin I made the most money. And so there have been times when I've thought, well, was it just the math? The easiest way to make the deepest cut on the content and strategy team was to let Ashley go. Like, I've thought those thoughts. I haven't thought anything about letting me go was personal. Like anyone looked at me and thought, well, we don't like her. We don't like working with her. I guess I've thought kind of sort of a variety, or not variety, variation rather, of what you're asking, in that I've thought on multiple occasions, how was what I did there not enough? Not like I did something wrong or that I should have done more, but why wasn't what I did accomplish enough? While I was at that company, I came up with the idea for, pitched, won budget for, won approval for, led the development of, and oversaw all the content development of a media site that was originally built to support 20 plus brands and became the foundation for an umbrella company that the parent company I worked for was setting up to cluster all those brands together. And it was wildly successful. It was bringing in leads. It was assisting with conversion. It was the origin point for sales that were happening. And it was bringing in at under 2 years after launch, over 20,000 organic visitors a month. It was by every conceivable measure, wildly successful. And even in the conversation when I got laid off, I said, I'm floored because I just handed you a foundation. I dreamt it up. Nobody assigned this project to me. I made it up. And it was exactly what the company needed. And so there have been times when I've thought, how is that not enough to save my job?
Yeah. No one's safe.
No
Yeah.
one's safe.
You never think you're a number when you're in the thick of it, when you're doing the thing, you're like, well, no, I add too much value to be a number. If I am a number, I'm a high number. Or a low number. I'm a number one or number two. I'm not number 150, but that day you were, and it doesn't matter what you did prior, So, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I know there's some people who are going to get laid off or get news and they immediately jump to maybe a protected group that they're part of, whether it be the LGBTQ or, a new mom, they're Asian, and there's Asian hate that goes on, and racism and prejudices. I think that's another angle that a lot of people tend to go. Did you ever feel that way?
Not about the layoff. I did hear kind of through the grapevines, it's just hearsay. I don't know that there's anything substantive about it. But in very close proximity to when I was laid off, a leader in the company who's fairly high profile, who's also a transgender woman, was exiting the company. And I did hear through the grapevine that there were murmurings of people being concerned that it could reflect poorly on the company, that two trans women who were in leadership and she was far more high profile than me, but both of us to some degree high profile. I was certainly high profile within the company. I was the chairperson of the employee resource group for LGBTQIA2 plus folks. So among the thousands of employees across dozens of brands, there were a lot of people who knew my name and face. And I heard, feedback that there were some who were concerned that it could look like the company had kind of turned its back on trans folks. But I never saw or heard anything directly myself that made me feel that way. If I had, I probably would have spoken to an attorney, but I didn't. And that was also, this is the elephant in the room in a way, talking about LGBTQIA2 plus folks. And given the timing of my layoff, that was also immediately before the election. So had it happened after the election, I think it would have been much easier for me to question, does this have to do with the fact that I'm trans? It happened immediately before the election. So while there was a lot of campaign funds going toward anti-trans messaging, I didn't really have a feel for how solidly that message was connecting with other folks in America. And then the election happened and I was like, oh, shit, it's connecting more solidly than I thought. Oh, okay. But at the time, no, I didn't. And I still don't think that it's because I was trans. I think being trans has made the job hunt harder.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to jump into next is kind of, I've just recently been laid off, and I appreciate you sharing that context and not just blaming, the company for a lot of people can just do that and say, yeah, it's because I'm trans. That's why, chop up your whole downfall or your whole story right now to the fact that you're trans. And it's like, that's not something negative about you. That's something positive about you. The fact that I am trans, but I'm also all these other things, and laid off is also one of them. And it has nothing to
Yes.
do with, they're mutually exclusive. Now, I want to hear about what it's been like. So you've been laid off, you had your feelings. I guess, what did you do first, or what have you been doing that, you feel like you're doing all the right things, but you're just hitting a wall? And then how does being trans make that more difficult?
As far as what I did and what I've been doing, I kind of followed the playbook. And as I indicated earlier, this is the fourth time I've been laid off. So it's not unfamiliar territory to me, unfortunately. I immediately filed for unemployment, got those resources coming in, uh, dove into a job hunt, refreshed my resume, started watching the job boards, seeing what was out there, reaching out to my network to see if anybody knew of anything that I'd be a good fit for. All the things that in the past have worked for me to get a job. There was one point when I was laid off that the same day I was laid off, I got my first interview for the job I eventually won about 3 weeks later. So like, I was pretty optimistic at first because my experience in the past has been, it's fine. There's other jobs. This is disappointing. I'll miss the people I used to work with, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I'll find something else. So I started doing all of those things. And at the same time, I started taking on freelance work. My passion is for content strategy and content marketing, but I can also do web design, graphic design, general marketing, consultation. So I started looking for local businesses in the area where I live to take on as clients. And I found a few. But unsurprisingly, with as wonky as the economy's been since the election, there aren't a lot of small businesses looking to throw a lot of money down on marketing right now. So it's been really hard to find freelance work. And I don't even know. I've seen several people on LinkedIn cite specific numbers. I've applied to 500, 1,200, 2,000 jobs. I don't have any idea. It's in the thousands. I don't have any idea how many jobs I've applied to. But it's four digits for sure. And I just started going through that process. And it was within maybe 3 months, probably around the 3 month, 4 month mark, somewhere around there, that I started wondering, am I not having any luck because I'm trans? Because that was, after the inauguration and the rollback of DIB for so many companies, so many organizations. And there was a significantly long list of brands I was really disappointed in to see that they just cut those funds, cut those programs. And then I started wondering, is that a reason why people aren't wanting to interview me? Because anyone who goes to my LinkedIn profile and reads through just a little bit, you don't have to look very hard. I'm not constantly blasting the fact that I'm trans, but I'm not hiding it either. It's a facet of who I am. And I didn't want to scrub my profile and try and take that out. So I'm like, well, it's right there. Anyone who's looking for it could see it. Is that an inhibiting factor for me? And I don't know. It might be.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask a question that may be ignorant, but I think it's more of a for someone who has the lack of knowledge. So naive, I guess. I don't know. But in dating profiles, which is what I like to compare this crazy job market to right now, I love to compare it to dating and online dating. So in dating profiles, there's a lot of stigma about people who are maybe in the trans community and they identify as, let's say they were born male, they identify as female, their profile's female, they don't call it out on their profile. And people feel like a big bait and switch and they're like, whoa, I just wish you were upfront about it. Now, fine, I have no opinion to give here, but taking that to the job market, I've seen the box sometimes that says, are you LGBTQ? Are you trans? Are you identifying as the gender that you were born at? Like, I've seen this question asked very different ways, and I half the time skip past the questions anyways, so I don't answer them. But when I do, it's born male, currently identifying as male, and it feels like I'm going out of my way to answer this question that I don't understand why, because I'm going to do the job. Doesn't matter if I'm a monkey. If I can do the job, I should be able to do the job. So what is the stigma, or how does it work, I guess, when you're applying to jobs? Do you feel like when you hit that button that says, I identify as trans, that you're immediately put into a different category and they're like, we're not even looking at these resumes?
I don't know. Any answer I give to that is pure conjecture on my part. So I'll own that up front. I don't know what's happening at any specific company or in general. What I imagine might be happening probably looks more like systemic racism than an overt decision to discriminate. And what I mean by that is a few years ago, I read a book that I genuinely wish I could remember the name of off the top of my head, but I don't. But it was about systemic racism. And I was about a third of the way into the book when I realized, oh, dear God, I've played into this as a person who was born Caucasian in ways I didn't realize I had. It wasn't my intent. It wasn't aligned with my values. I didn't want to have played a role in it, but I had. And I saw it clearly and also saw clearly I need to take responsibility for that. And I need to foster greater awareness so that I can do the things I need to do to proactively not contribute to systemic racism, because that's what it demands. We can't just say, I think everybody is equal, so I'm not part of the problem. No, it doesn't work that way. When it's systemic and woven into how we interact with each other, we have to intentionally break very subtle cycles to break down that kind of oppression. And I think that may be, and I don't know, but that may be what's happening for a lot of folks who are LGBTQIA2 plus right now. I don't think recruiters or hiring managers are looking at that box, which I do, by the way, mark accurately, because what am I going to do? They're going to get on a video call with me and be like, wow, her voice is not what I expect, or they're going to look at my LinkedIn profile and see that there are posts there that say that I'm trans. I don't want it to be that scenario where folks are like, why didn't you just own who you are? So I market correctly. And I don't know that there's any hiring manager or recruiter who's looking at that and going, well, we have a special pile for those. Like I don't think it's quite that overt. But if you're looking at 20 resumes and you know you only have the bandwidth to interview 6 people and you have to cut 14, and it's for a position that's in your marketing department and that could at times require that person to be public facing, I think it would be very easy to discount an overtly trans person without even realizing you're doing it because it carries with it so much potential baggage in the current political climate. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. But I'm not trans, so I can't speak from that perspective. But I've often wondered, I'm blunt, and I feel like the people who know me know that I'm blunt. And I don't mean this to target any one person, but I've been targeted for sure. I'm dark enough to the point where people know I'm not white, but I'm light enough to where they're like, well, I don't know if you're black either, right? And maybe you're Mexican, but you're not Mexican enough looking that I would want to, deport you, which is weird. I fall into this very like light-skinned, privileged area, which I love only because I don't get pulled over every day.
Yeah.
I have 2 dogs. I hate getting pulled over because they bark, and then it's this whole thing. So I've digressed, but what I'm trying to get at is like, I've often wondered, I've seen my male counterparts that are white land interviews and jobs so quickly because their name is John. We're going to go with that because it's so generic, and I'm definitely not speaking about any specific John because I do have friends named John, and I'm not talking about you. But I'm just saying, I've seen those people be like, because, when you're looking through resumes and you see John Smith and then you see like Dre Jankowski, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we know which one. Well, we make an assumption about which one is more diverse, which one's not going to show up and be, a white male. So I've often wondered, like, if we took the name off, if we made it anonymous, if we took the gender off, if we used a voice over where it was the bias, a male interviewer might like hearing a female voice. If everyone's voice sounded female to this interviewer and they couldn't see their face and they didn't know what school they went to, and it was strictly off of what did you do, what value do you add, and why should you get this position? I wonder if the makeup of businesses, the people who land the positions, the people we see in leadership would be different because the bias is completely taken out. And I've gotten a lot of hate from my family for saying things like this, but my family's mixed, right? So some of them are white, some of them are not. I'm curious if I could ask what your opinion would be there. Do you think that you would get these jobs in this case if it was all anonymous, or do you still think maybe there's something else here?
I think it's possible that I would have gotten interviews I haven't gotten. Do I think it's the single most significant contributing factor to the point that it's the reason I haven't found a job in 9 months? No, the job market's terrible. I've talked to enough people I've talked to cis white males who are months into their job search and having no luck. So I don't think at the end of the day, the reason I haven't found a job is because I'm trans. I think, well, like any other form of discrimination, it just means I have to work harder. It may take me longer. I mean, that's true for so many minorities in our country and in other countries. It's not like it's a given that a minority is just always going to lose out. But what is a given is that the vast majority of the time, someone who identifies with a minority community, a minority identity, is going to have to work harder and find themselves in more places where luck kind of smiles on them to achieve the same things that someone with privilege could achieve with a little less effort. That's what privilege is. It's that I'm running a 100-meter sprint next to a bunch of other job seekers who are running a 100-meter sprint. I have hurdles and some of them don't. It's still conceivable I could win the race, but I'm going to have to be faster and more agile and more coordinated to win the race because I'm not just sprinting, I'm also jumping over hurdles.
Yeah, and that's where some of these terms like Black excellence is coined,
Yeah.
because you're starting life behind in a race that we're all running. But again, I like to focus this podcast around layoffs and the struggle, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. I am by no means trying to take a stance, and I've appreciated your viewpoint of not being like, it's because of my identity that I am not finding a job. You recognize that there are hurdles we all have to jump through or over, and your identity doesn't make them, you know, not there. It may add more, but it doesn't make them not there. We all still have the same ones that we're jumping through in 2025 in this crazy market. Now, I'd love to flip the page and talk a little bit more about financial hardships because I ironically, right before this, got a text from a friend who was like, I've been laid off. I just hit the 3 month mark, and every single time I have to go pay my bills and I open my savings and I watch that number go down, it's not heartbreak, but it's like this just null pain of like, and you want to cry and you want to be like, I have one more cycle of bills that I can pay before, and I don't even know if my OnlyFans will kick off, right? Like, do I turn to that? I don't know what I turn to. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because 8 months, 9 months, that's a long time to not have a job.
It is. It's long enough that, I live in Oregon. It's long enough that I used all of the funds available for my first unemployment claim. I can't file another unemployment claim within the same calendar, not the same calendar year, within a year to the date of the first claim. So I have to wait until October to file another claim. I was frugal with my severance and I had some savings, and I have done some freelance web development and content work. So I've had some funds come in, and not nearly as much as I had hoped, but some. And so I've made it longer than I'm shocked that I'm still okay. I bought the house that I'm in right now. I closed on it in May of 2024. So fantastic timing to have bought a house. But I haven't lost my house yet. I was also investing pretty aggressively in an employee stock plan. I haven't cashed that money out yet. That is my next step. And I'm probably within 6 to 8 weeks of having to cash that out. That's when I'll run out of what I have left in savings. That will probably carry me through to the next unemployment claim, which will carry me for a little while. But it's already weighing on my mind. I may have to sell my house. I may lose my house, and I don't know what I'll do then. I don't know where I'll go. I won't be able to get an apartment without income. I don't have any contact with my family. That'll probably be the point at which I'm going to friends and saying, hey, whose couch can I stay on for a little while? And I have two cats, and they're the closest thing I have to family in terms of like living in the same house with me. I don't want to give them up. Can I bring them with? And I don't want that to be my reality, but I'm looking at the time that has passed and is continuing to pass, and that's the dull ache, is being
Yeah.
aware that that could happen.
And it's crazy because it's something that you didn't ask for. You didn't quit your job and just try to make it in life. You woke up and lifed. It just hit you. And now here you are. So through this, what are the first few things that you stopped doing? Or when you talk about being frugal, like what is it? Did you stop going to get fast food? Did you stop going out to eat? Like what things did you kind of stop doing that have changed from a year ago to today?
I spent a lot less online shopping for sure. I was fortunate. I had a job with a good enough salary that if I saw something relatively inexpensive and I wanted it, I just bought it. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to, make a plan month over month where I would just get it. I stopped doing that. It's changed in a variety of ways. I will buy the generic brand of virtually anything because there's savings in that. I have my thermostat set higher than it was last summer. I've done a lot of things, and I've done things that were hard to do because as someone who felt very self-made, felt like I've made it without the support or help of my family even, it was hard for me to realize, okay, so there's some food banks near me that have, a day of the week when they hand out bags of resources. I should probably start taking advantage, but I do now. I'm on Snap right now, which is, the equivalent of food stamps, because those are resources that are available to me. I've met multiple times with folks at my local work source office, and I was almost apologetic about it when I first started talking to them, and they suggested some of those resources. And I said, I still have money in my savings account. I'm just trying to make it as long as I can to give myself the longest possible runway to ensure that I find a job. And I had the folks at the WorkSource office say, that's exactly why you should take this help. It's not because you're at the point where you literally don't have money in your bank account to buy food. It's to extend how long you can buy food so that you hopefully make it through this tough period. And I took what they said to heart and took advantage of it. So it is a wide variety of things. I don't eat out nearly as often. I have a partner who I really value time with and who means a lot to me. So the rare occasions when I eat out are typically with her. So what little budget I allow myself for that, I spend on her. I do still spend money. I haven't like ratcheted my budget down to the point where I don't allow myself to purchase anything that's fun, because I'm also trying to balance my mental health and being able to socialize with folks and do some things that are worth doing. I think those things are valuable too. But I've made a lot of shifts and changes. I mean, my monthly credit card, I'm one of those people who pays my credit cards off in full every month. And my monthly credit card bills are a sliver of what they used to be, because I don't spend freely like I used to be one of those people who, if I was out with friends at a bar, I would just randomly get other people's drinks because I care about people and I like being able to be generous. And I felt fortunate to have the salary that I had coming in. I don't do those things right now. I can't afford to.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience for sure. I am not quite, it's only been 3 months, 2 months for me, and I'm not there yet, but I do every day think about it. Like, whenever I go anywhere now, I'm like, don't be the person who pays. Don't take my card out. I actually forgot my wallet. I can't go. Could you pick me up? Doing everything in my power to save money. I have a hybrid electric charged vehicle, right? So I get like the first 42 miles of electric charge. And I'm like, the amount that I've been hogging the carport to charge it for my 42 miles. For the people who have like Cybertrucks in my development, they're like, I need it to charge my entire vehicle. And I'm like, I get it, but I need to go to the gym every day. So I
Yeah.
need to get 5 miles down the road and back, and I don't want to waste gas. Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't understand. And it's interesting because a lot of people don't talk about it's a very weird space, right? Using those resources they're made for this exact situation. But when you are employed and you're making money and you're gainfully employed, you look at it as like only people who are so poor, like they don't have anything. That's who that's for. You donate
Yeah.
because you're like, wow, they have nothing. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, this is a crutch before you have nothing.
And if it keeps me or anyone else from hitting that point where they truly have no resources, that is invaluable. And that's part of what, not to get overly political, but that's part of what broke my heart about some of the spending adjustments that are going to be made as a part of the big beautiful bill. Is I'm like, but people rely on that. It's this narrative that it's just people who are playing video games in their mom's basement. No, there are people like me who my resume is the most stacked it's ever been in my life. I can point to projects I've led and I can show metrics for things I've accomplished as a marketer that are over the top. And yet, when I go to apply for a job, I am likely one of literally over 1,000 candidates, bare minimum. And all of us, there's so many people. You go on LinkedIn right now, it's hard for me to be on LinkedIn right now because there are so many people posting about the difficulties of their current job search. It feels like an echo chamber of pain.
Yeah.
And
I love those people only because I asked them to be on my podcast, but I'm one of those
and,
people.
and I try to uplift those people when I come across them, because many of them have uplifted me. But there's a lot of folks in the same situation as me. So anyone who is unemployed, I would say, whatever your feelings are about those resources, use them. And if it is humbling or uncomfortable, the first time I pulled out my SNAP card at the grocery store, I was very uncomfortable, but I did it because I want the resources that are available to me to carry me as far as possible. And if the additional, whatever the additional amount of time is, if the additional time those resources buys me is the time during which I find a job, then it's well worth it.
Yeah.
So I
Do you
think
think that now being impacted this badly by a layoff, I don't know what your perspective was to these resources prior to this were. I don't know if you donated. I don't know if you ever, bought sandwiches, made sandwiches, gave them to people who were less fortunate. Do you have a better appreciation for these resources that are out there now?
I would say I do have a better appreciation, but I'm someone who has donated. I'm someone who's also volunteered. I've worked in soup kitchens. I've done volunteer work that put me very much on the front lines of helping folks who needed similar assistance in the past. So like, for me, when I show up to, you know, one of these food banks that has, I live in a smaller town. So like the ones that are near me, they'll have like one day when at one specific time frame they're giving food out. And so that means when you go through the line, there's like all these volunteers, like, there's someone over here giving you a little bag of produce and someone over here giving you milk and a pound of ground beef and whatever. And I've been one of the people on the other sides of those tables. And I think what it does for me and what I try to ground myself in is appreciating what it's like to be on this side of that table because I am and because I need that help. And so I think when I found another job and I'm able again to not need those resources and then be in a position where I can be on the other side of the table, giving, assisting, volunteering, I do think it's going to change how I feel about that because I'm going to have had the experience of being someone who received that kind of help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. I definitely have gone through similar feelings. Again, I haven't utilized the resources as much. I grew up poor though, so going through the line and the EBT snap card doesn't work because there's no money on it. I still get like trauma responses from when someone's like, your Amex was declined. I was like, I'm one of those people. I'm like, it's an Amex. Are you kidding? There's no limit. What do you mean? And then it's like, oh, it's because, I forgot to move the money out of my savings account to my checking account. So when I paid it, the money didn't go through. So it
Yeah.
truly is like they locked it and they were like, you can't use it. But it literally makes me sweat. And I'm like, take all of my credit cards, try something. I don't know. I'm nervous. Like, just give the food back. I don't want it. So I'm with you on having an appreciation for the resources that are out there. I know you want to talk about the positives or giving a message and staying positive. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what, now that you've gone through this, for anybody who might get laid off in the next few weeks, for anyone who's just recently been laid off and they have no idea what's to come, what would you share with them?
Several things. I think the first thing that I would say to someone, whether they've been in a job search for a while now or if they just got laid off, I would say give yourself the space and the freedom and the permission to experience the range of emotions that you're experiencing, both right now and as you work your way through the process. I had an interview last week with a company for a position that it felt like it was made for me. It aligned so beautifully. Everything from the company's values and the problems they're trying to solve in the world to the specifics of what the job required. It felt like, oh my God, this job was made for me. And I made it to the first round of interviews, but not past the first round of interviews. And I was crushed by that. And I found that out last Thursday. And I actually posted this to LinkedIn that after I got that news, and this is literally true, I was just sitting at my desk quietly crying. And I let myself do that because it was disappointing and upsetting and heartbreaking. And I really thought I had a chance and I really wanted that job, not just because it's a job. I wanted that job because of how I would have been able to spend my time and what that company represents to me. I think giving ourselves permission to be disappointed. If you have a day when you're like, I just can't do it anymore, well, then don't fill out any applications that day. Um, do the thing that is self-care for you. If you need to vent about it, cry about it, distract yourself and do something else, whatever you got to do. Along the same lines, my strategy has adjusted recently. I now have a range of applications I want to make sure that I complete every day, every workday. Once I have hit my goal, if I feel like keeping going, I'll keep going. But once I've hit my goal, if I'm like, I puked the last one out, I hate this, then I stop. On Monday, this past just 2 days ago, that meant I hit my goal. And then I went and worked on cleaning up my garage, which isn't going to do a damn thing to help me get a job. but is invaluable for my mental health because I was able to still do something productive that I could feel good about doing that benefits me in some way without feeling like I was just, putting my own heart on the altar of the job search gods and stabbing it over and over again. I'd hit a point where I'm like, I don't have anything more to give to my job search right now. So I stopped giving to it. And I think finding ways to create those kinds of balance is critical. Finding folks who you can vent to is critical. And I have a few folks I can do that with. I would definitely encourage folks to not do what I've seen so many people do and take to LinkedIn to vent about it. I think being, and there's a line to walk here. I think being authentic on LinkedIn, I'm in a months long job search and it's hard. I think that's beautiful and good and worth sharing and worth saying. But I've also seen a lot of folks just rail on recruiters, rail on their former employer. And the thought that crosses my mind every time is, anyone that you hope to interview with who decides to look at your LinkedIn profile is going to see that, right? Is that really the first impression you want to make? And maybe railing on your former employer, railing on the recruiter you had an experience with most recently is valid. It might be. It still may not be the best content for that venue because it doesn't serve you, doesn't help you. So I try to, when I have those moments and feel those things, not blast that on social media. Share that with someone else who has the spoons to hear it and has the capacity to validate what I'm feeling. And then I get it out of my system. And I still bring the authentic struggle to LinkedIn. I don't hide that it's hard. I think that's worth sharing, but I still want the way I share it to have kind of a positive bent to it.
Yeah, I don't have enough feelings to like rage on LinkedIn, but I definitely have seen them, and I appreciate the person. I don't think, I don't hire, but if I was, I don't think it would stop me, only because it's like I've been on both sides now. So I
Yeah.
get it. I know how you're feeling, and it's maybe that's not what I would do and that's not how I'd express myself, but this is your platform just like it's mine, and that is a perception of who you are. But if I look past if I look in the history of all the things you posted prior to that, you had 3 posts and they were never anything bad about the company. You're hurt. You're hurting,
Yeah.
It's a full story. And that's what I hate about perception is people can have one bad run-in and all of a sudden their perception is tainted of themselves. And it's like, but what about all the amazing things they did and all the times they took the high road and they were the great person? I somewhat feel that people are entitled to have the hate post. And if it gets a ton of likes and visibility and they get interviews for it, cool. If not, and no one sees it, also cool.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
it's your space. Like the delete button exists. I don't know if it truly deletes off the internet, saved something somewhere, but you can always come to my podcast and talk about it if you guys want to yell about that. We love screaming here.
Well, and maybe a lot of it, and I think everything you're saying is valid. And so, if anybody's hearing me say that and it just rubs them the wrong way, okay, you do you. You don't, my way doesn't have to be everybody's way. Maybe a lot of the reason I feel that way about it is because that's what I need for my own mental health. I need to find ways to stay optimistic because if I don't, then the despair becomes crushing. So, at 9 months into a job search, scared that I might lose my home. And you shared earlier that you grew up poor. I grew up poor too. My family never took advantage of those resources. They were too proud to. But I grew up poor and my degrees aren't in business or marketing. My degrees are in theology. My first career was that I was a minister. To have made it in content marketing, I was starting from ground zero. I didn't even have a degree to pull from for it. I clawed my way into that career and it was hard. It was hard to get to where I was and to get as far as I got, to get to the point where my title was literally, I was a global director, and then just have it all wiped away and then not be able to find anything else is truly devastating and scary. If I don't find ways to maintain optimism, the despair becomes crushing. So that's what I have to do for me. If something else works for someone else, that's totally fine. That's just what works for me.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think, are you open to people connecting with you? Hopefully they're sending positive posts, but are you open to people connecting with you or sending a connection request if they hear this and they resonate with the things that you've shared today on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would welcome that from anybody. And, if there's anything I can do to help anyone else who's job seeking, I would be happy to help. I mean, given that I'm still looking, I don't know how much I can do right now, but I'm happy to help folks in whatever way I can. And I'm absolutely open to connection requests.
That was Ashley Martin. And if you're anything like me, you're walking away from this conversation with a full heart and a little more perspective. Her story isn't just about surviving a layoff. It's about holding on to your worth even when everything around you tells you to shrink. It's about navigating systems that weren't built for you and still showing up with kindness, clarity, and conviction. Whether you're dealing with your career setbacks, identity struggles, or just the quiet ache of uncertainty, I hope Ashley's story reminded you that you're not alone and you're not doing it wrong. This economy is hard. This moment is hard, but you're still here, and that matters. If you connected with Ashley's story, I encourage you to reach out and connect with her on LinkedIn. She's open, thoughtful, and building community one conversation at a time. And if the Reboot Era has been helping you through your own chapter of change, consider sharing this episode with someone else who could use it. We're all figuring it out together. Until next time, keep going.